Hello, and welcome to Global Eye, a program that brings you unmissable investigations and reporting from around the globe made by teams from across the BBC World Service. I am Farhat Javed, a BBC correspondent based in Pakistan, and this week we are here in the capital, Islamabad. Pakistan is confronting a rapidly escalating HIV crisis, now among the fastest growing in South Asia. Figures from the World Health Organization reveal that infections have risen by 200% over the past 15 years. And uniquely, children are now getting the disease in high numbers even when their parents are fine. BBC Eye has been investigating how routine visits for medical treatment in Pakistan have resulted in hundreds of children getting this infection.
He injects his first patient through a cannula in his arm, but then takes the same syringe and puts it back into the medicine vial. There is no reason to believe he does, but if this child had HIV, the entire vial could now be contaminated.
Also coming up on the program, as Pakistan takes a lead role in attempts to broker a ceasefire in Iran, it stands on the brink of a full-scale war with another neighbor, Afghanistan. Why are they fighting, and what is at stake for the millions of ordinary people caught in the crossfire? And we'll bring you the story of the world's biggest Palestinian community outside of the Middle East, and its location might surprise you. Many thousands of Palestinians have been living in Chile in South America since the 19th century. We'll follow members of the community as they help refugees from Gaza build new lives on a new continent.
Hay un dicho que se dice que en cada pueblo, ciudad de Chile, vaya a encontrar una plaza, unos bomberos y un paisano. Y es muy verdad. Me gusta que acá haya como una mini Palestina.
Hundreds of children in central Pakistan have recently tested positive for HIV. They came from different local communities set dozens of miles apart. But local doctors noticed one thing appeared to unite most of their pediatric patients who tested positive, that they had been treated at the same local government hospital. Officials say there is no proof children were infected there, but BBC Eye went undercover to investigate the source of the HIV outbreak and find out who is to blame. Here is Ghazal Abbasi.
This is 8-year-old Mohammed Amin.
MashaAllah.
In 2024, he fell ill with a fever and received treatment at his local hospital, THQ Donsa, in central Pakistan. But after being discharged, Mohammed Amin got worse.
मेरे बेटे को दर्द शुरू थी गए, मेरे बेटे को बुखार ज़्यादा थी गए। मोहम्मद अमीन बारिश समदा बारिश बसदी दे विच इवें तड़फदा जिवें कोई घिऊ सटेने तो उंदे विच के सट गदे तो.
Eventually, the boy was diagnosed with HIV. He began treatment, but it came too late.
वाले उतो मेरा शाम 5 बजे वाला वो लग प्यारा थी गए.
The family's trauma didn't end there.
आपका क्या नाम है?
अस्मा बीबी।
अस्मा बीबी। और अस्मा, आप कैसा महसूस कर रही हो आज? ठीक?
Shortly after Mohammed Amin's death, his older sister Asma also received treatment for flu symptoms at THQ Donsa Hospital. 2 months later, she too fell seriously ill.
ठीक बुखार मैं तो जले अस्मा बीबी कोई टीके लाने बोतल लाने पीछे जले इन जिसम में दर्द उठे ज़्यादा बुखार उठे बच्चे को इवें तकलीफ आई आज ये डॉक्टर साहब मेरी बच्ची को इवें मां मन के टेस्ट उन्हें के इतना तो से दिया अस्पताल दे जो तेरी बच्ची को ये बीमारी ऐसी मौजूद है भाई. Yeah.
No adult in Asma's family tested positive for HIV. So how did she contract the disease? In the winter of 2024 and 2025, more than 100 children in Donsa tested positive for HIV. Like Asma, many of those kids had been treated at the government hospital, THQ.
याद आ
And many of their parents told stories about syringes being reused on child after child. In late 2025, the BBC Eye team went undercover inside THQ Hospital to see if these allegations were true. Was medical malpractice placing children's lives at risk?
वालेकुम सलाम
The Tehsil Headquarters Hospital in Tonsa Sharif, known as THQ. A staff member, worried about what he'd seen on the children's ward, helped us to document how children are treated. It immediately becomes clear that the go-to method of treatment for any fever or ailment is via injection, mostly with liquid paracetamol.
मुतमईन थी मैं तो टीके लगा
Signs about infection control hang on walls around the hospital, but staff appear to ignore them. Like these nurses who inject patients through their clothes. They're not wearing sterile gloves. No cotton swabs are used. Patients are left to walk around the ward with blood on their sleeves. It doesn't take long before our camera captures something much worse.
ठीक है अभी 10 बार पड़ी है
The nurse pulls up a used syringe from under the counter. Liquid from the last patient is still visible inside. She hands it to her colleague, ready to be reused on another child.
ये सिंगल यूज आइटम्स हैं जो कि मल्टीपल टाइम्स इस्तेमाल होंगे
We showed our undercover footage to one of Pakistan's leading experts on infectious diseases.
एक ये हाईलाइट करता है कि हमारे हेल्थ केयर प्रोवाइडर की इन्फेक्शन कंट्रोल ट्रेनिंग बहुत पुअर है हमें और इंजेक्टर्स को डराना पड़ेगा कि आप एक एक्टिव इंस्ट्रूमेंट बन गए हैं बीमारी फैलाने के लिए
By early 2025, so many children had tested positive for HIV that parents came out on the street in Tonsa demanding action. In mid-March, the government finally stepped in.
UNICEF, WHO and Mahkama Healthcare Punjab का joint mission कायम कर दिया गया.
A joint task force was set up to investigate what had gone wrong and why.
मैसिव क्रैकडाउन के साथ साथ स्क्रीनिंग की भी 2-3 कैंपेन शुरू करेंगे हम अस्पताल में भी लेंगे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव चाहे वो अस्पताल की एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है तमाम की तमाम के खिलाफ एक्शन लेंगे
Our undercover team went into the hospital 6 months after the crackdown. But it didn't take long for them to capture proof that children were still being put at risk. In the children's emergency ward, this worker is getting ready to fulfill a series of paracetamol prescriptions. He takes a new syringe and fills it from a multi-use vial of paracetamol. He injects his first patient through a cannula in his arm, but then takes the same syringe and puts it back into the medicine vial. There is no reason to believe he does, but if this child had HIV, the entire vial could now be contaminated. Every child subsequently injected from that vial is at risk of contracting the disease. The worker dips a new syringe into the same potentially infected vial and injects the next child, again through a cannula. And then a third time, he goes into the same vial and injects a third child via a cannula in his arm. Dr. Altaf Ahmed is a clinical microbiologist specialising in bloodborne diseases.
उस पहले वाले बच्चे को HIV था या कोई भी ब्लड बॉर्न वायरस थी, तो क्या चांसेस हैं कि इस दूसरे बच्चे को भी हो सकते हैं?
बहुत ज़्यादा चांसेस, बहुत ज़्यादा, बिकॉज द वायल इज़ कंटामिनेटेड। चाहे वो नीडल उन्होंने नहीं भी लगा ली हो, तो पीछे का जो हिस्सा है जिसको हम सिरिंज की बॉडी कहते हैं, उसमें तो वायरस है ना, तो वो नई नीडल से भी चला जाएगा। द होल सिरिंज हैज़ टू बी डिस्कार्डेड।
Our team witnessed 10 occasions when vials were double-dipped and potentially contaminated. All this months after the government promised to keep Donsa's children safe.
जब से ये आउटब्रेक हुआ है उसके बाद से वो नज़र नहीं आता कि वाकई कोई लेसन लर्न किया।
Even after the government intervention in THQ, HIV infections amongst Donsa's children appear to have continued. We brought together data from the Punjab Provincial AIDS Screening Programme, a dataset leaked by Special Branch, and records from local private clinics. And documented 331 children from Donsa who tested HIV positive between November 2024 and October 2025. Of their parents who also agreed to be tested, less than 1 in 20 was HIV positive. Dr. Qasim Buzdar has been the medical superintendent of THQ since March 2025, when the government intervened to put an end to the outbreak.
आपने MS बनकर उस आउटब्रेक के बाद क्या तब्दीलियां मुतारिफ करवाई हैं?
पैरामेडिक्स हैं, स्टाफ नर्सेज हैं, उनकी हमने ट्रेनिंग्स करवाए कि भाई HIV हवाले के हमने इसको किस तरह इसको रोकना है और किस तरह HIV को शिकस्त देना है।
उस ट्रेनिंग में क्या-क्या शामिल किया आपने इंस्ट्रक्शंस?
इन्फेक्शन प्रिवेंशन कंट्रोल, उनको बाकायदा ट्रेंड किया गया इस बारे में, और इस पे MS का ज़ीरो टॉलरेंस है। मैं खुद विजिट करता हूँ और देखता हूँ इन्फेक्शन प्रिवेंशन कंट्रोल।
I point out we have evidence that syringes are currently being reused at the hospital.
नर्सिंग स्टाफ हैं, वो एक सिरिंज लेकर दवाई निकालते हैं मल्टी डोज वायल से, और फिर एक बच्चे को कानियला के जरिए एडमिनिस्टर करते हैं, और फिर उसी सिरिंज को लेके वापस जाते हैं मल्टी डोज वायल में।
नहीं, अभी ये प्रैक्टिस बिल्कुल नहीं है।
अच्छा, डॉक्टर कासिम, मुझे आपको कुछ दिखाना है।
पहले के प्रैक्टिसेस थे,
ये नवंबर दिसंबर 2025 के हैं,
लेकिन ये पिक्चर आपका प्लांटेड भी हो सकता।
In a shocking display of denial, the hospital boss refuses to admit that our footage is current or even real.
जो HIV मुतासिर बच्चों के वालिदैन हैं, जब वो ये फुटेज देखेंगे, उन्हें आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे कि अभी तक ये हो रहा है?
इन्फेक्शन प्रिवेंशन के हवाले से वो THQ हॉस्पिटल तो समय फॉलो हो रहा है।
लेकिन मैंने अभी आपको दिखाया कि नहीं हो रहे।
मैं एग्री नहीं इससे आपकी।
We asked the local government for a response to the allegations in this film. It said no validated epidemiological evidence has conclusively established THQ as a source. The Joint Mission has reaffirmed the role of unregulated private practices and the contribution of unscreened blood transfusions. But an insider leaked the Joint Mission inspection report to BBC Eye. Conducted by WHO experts, it does highlight the issues outlined in our film, issues the government and hospital bosses continue to deny. For children growing up with HIV, the future feels uncertain and frightening.
जी अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह, इन इलाके वाले को बीमारी का पता सारे घर लोग क्या जो हमसाए हैं उनको पता है, क्योंकि अपने बच्चे को तकरीबन असमत नाल खेलने नहीं देने, इतना खौफ होने। हमसाए रिश्तेदार तो अपने बालक को इन असमत नाल टच भी नहीं थी देने।
Harmed in the very place trusted to keep them safe, they will face stigma and need treatment for life.
वो अपनी अम्मी को लड़के बोला पूछ दिए जो मेरे को क्या है तो औषधियाँ दी जो भी बच्चे खेलते नहीं मेरे साथ चलते नहीं.
It should never have happened. Hundreds of children infected with an incurable disease on a visit to the doctor. But instead of facing the truth about what's gone wrong, doctors and politicians seem more concerned with protecting their own reputations. Until Pakistan holds those responsible to account, more parents and more children will be forced to live through this nightmare.
This mosque in the suburbs of Islamabad is usually filled with worshippers gathered here for prayers, but now it stands quiet, watched over by security guards and grieving families. Just a few weeks ago, this country was celebrating Basant, a spring kite festival many here hadn't seen for nearly 2 decades, but those celebrations were overshadowed by a tragedy. A suicide bomber attacked this Shia mosque, killing dozens of worshippers who were here for Friday prayer. Pakistani officials said that the attacker was linked to a militant network operating from across the border in Afghanistan. The Afghan Taliban government denied any involvement, but within days, Pakistan launched airstrikes inside Afghanistan, and since then, the tensions between the two neighbors have escalated into one of their most serious confrontations over the years.
Pakistan and Afghanistan share a border stretching more than 1,600 miles. For decades, it has been a place of trade, migration, and cultural ties. But it has also been exploited by militant networks moving between the two countries. Authorities here have accused the Pakistani Taliban, known as the TTP, of using Afghan territory as a base for operations. The Taliban government denies allowing militants to operate from its soil. But the accusations have fueled a growing diplomatic and military standoff.
I have reported on this conflict from both Afghanistan and Pakistan over the years, and the pattern has often been the same: accusations, denials, and cycles of violence that leave communities on both sides living with uncertainty. And those living near the frontier are the ones who are feeling the impact most acutely. In parts of Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, residents say that they have been told to leave villages which are now considered too dangerous. And in Afghanistan, hundreds of civilians are feared dead in Pakistani aerial strikes. Families living in this region have already experienced displacements during previous wars and military operations against militant groups. And now they fear being forced to start over again.
But it's clear that the conflict is no longer confined to the borderlands. Just a few weeks ago, Pakistan says one of its air defense systems intercepted Afghan drones near Islamabad. Afghan officials have not confirmed the incident, but have acknowledged that they have sent drones close to the Pakistani capital, meaning the conflict is no longer confined to remote border regions. Airstrikes in Kabul last month damaged critical infrastructure and caused civilian casualties.
Senators here at the Parliament House have unanimously supported taking action against militant networks said to be based in Afghanistan. But despite rising tensions, neither Afghanistan nor Pakistan can afford a prolonged confrontation.
With other neighbors, Pakistan is trying to turn geography into diplomacy. As well as Afghanistan, it also borders Iran. And Pakistani officials have played a crucial role in attempts to broker a ceasefire between Tehran and Washington. Iran and Pakistan have a long history of cooperating over energy, trade, and their joint response to separatist Baloch insurgents who operate across both countries' border. Meanwhile, the Pakistani army chief, Asim Munir, has developed a strong personal rapport with Donald Trump, who has called him his favorite field marshal. Pakistan has a powerful self-interest in ending the war in Iran. It depends on Gulf energy, needs Saudi money, wants US favor, and fears any sectarian spillover at home given its significant Shia population. So it makes sense that Pakistan has been acting as an intermediary between the US and Iran, passing messages between the two, publicly putting pressure on Iran and offering to host rounds of talks. So even as Pakistan risks escalating tensions with Afghanistan, it has been acting as a force for de-escalation in Iran.
And now we are taking you to Chile in South America, home to what is believed to be the largest Palestinian community outside the Arab world. A migration that began in late 19th century during the final decades of the Ottoman Empire. Over the years, Palestinian newcomers built successful businesses across the country while preserving their traditions through food, dance, and a deep passion for football. Today, the descendants of those early migrants are welcoming refugees from Gaza. BBC Mundo traveled to Chile to find out how they are adapting to a new life across the world.
Yo crecí, nací, desde que tengo conciencia me sentí palestina, sobre todo cuando era niña, y era muy loco pertenecer a un lugar al cual no tienes acceso real o tangible. Ah, ya.
Hola, ¿te costó llegar?
¿Te costó llegar?
Como 20 peldaños, ¿no? No, 100 metros.
La mayor comunidad palestina fuera de los países del mundo árabe está en Chile. Hay diversas razones y nulas razones. Como que tampoco está tan bien explicado, no se sabe por qué, no se entiende tan bien por qué.
Para mí la única respuesta clara que puedo dar es que es por azar. Llegaron, el primero que llegó a Chile le gustó Chile.
Mi tatarabuelo.
Y aquí está tu tatarabuela. Dime si no es de las cruzadas.
Sí. Mi tatarabuelo y mi tatarabuela.
¿Hay suficiente lavan puesto o llevo más?
No, hay lana suficiente.
Acabo de revisar los registros históricos que tengo yo en el cuarto libro.
Sí.
Y los primeros inmigrantes, el primero que llegó a Chile llegó en 1853.
Ah, no te puedo creer. Te juro que no tenía idea. 1853.
Llegaron a las salitreras del norte. Chile era rico con el salitre. Mi padre y mi madre nacieron en Palestina. Mi hermano mayor también nació en Palestina. Soy arquitecto de profesión y comerciante, porque aquí uno, siendo hijo de comerciante, nunca deja de ser comerciante.
Celso Chaguán, el boxeador de la familia.
Claro.
Ya, se está enfriando la comida.
Mira, a ver, la inauguración de la tienda de Jorge Chaguán en Santo Domingo.
¿Verdad? A ver,
Con
ese es mi
discurso de
bisabuelo.
Celso Chaguán.
Al tío Celso, por favor.
Él está haciendo discurso.
Ese,
mi suegro.
Sí, pues, ese es mi abuelo.
Mi suegro,
Claro.
el Guillermo.
Qué bonito. Era
De aquí viene la belleza. Los primeros inmigrantes palestinos llegaron a Chile huyendo de un imperio otomano que los oprimía y de un futuro incierto. Los barcos se demoraban 3 meses fácilmente. Llegaron aquí sin saber el idioma, una gran barrera. Después llegaban en carruaje y lo llenaban de mercadería, entonces llegaban a un poblado, a una feria y se anunciaban con un silbato. Los árabes hicieron un gran trabajo en ir surtiendo a todos estos lugares donde no había donde comprar nada y la gente se sentía muy complacida de que fuera un falte, como le llamaban, porque lo único que sabían decir, ¿qué falte? Después, cuando ocurrió el Nakba para nosotros, la catástrofe que fue la guerra del 48, donde se fundó el Estado de Israel, llegó mucha gente, pero ya no tanta como la primera vez. Yo diría que los que vinieron a Chile pero era porque tenían parientes en Chile.
¿Qué estoy comiendo? Vamos solo.
Hay una imagen de que todos los árabes somos ricos. Hay de todo. Hay unos que son multimillonarios, dueños de bancos, dueños de grandes empresas, de compañías de seguros, y otros que son profesores de escuela, pequeños empleados.
Para mí el idioma es una de las primeras cosas que se perdió de la cultura. Por lo tanto, las generaciones de mi papá, de mi mamá, no hablaban mucho el idioma, solamente unas palabras, y yo tampoco dominaba el idioma. Pero yo siempre sentía la necesidad de estar más cerca de Palestina. La primera vez que fui a Palestina fue como llegar a mi casa. De que era cierta esta pertenencia que sentís como imaginaria, era muy real. Y me di cuenta que el idioma era lo único que me iba a permitir poder comprender y poder sentirme parte de eso. Porque yo llegaba a Palestina y decía, sí, yo soy palestina, pero ¿cómo no habláis árabe? Vamos a hacer un repaso. Preséntate.
Me llamo Sam.
Ya, ¿cuántos años tenís?
Tengo 21 años.
¿De dónde eres?
De Palestina, de Gaza.
De Palestina de Gaza. ¿Y vives dónde?
Yo vivo en Santiago, Recoleta.
En Santiago Recoleta. ¿Por qué?
Soy refugiado de Gaza en Chile.
Ah, bravo. ¿Estás agradecido? ¿Agradecido? Yani mashkur. Hay una comunidad palestina en Chile que siempre está muy cerca de Palestina. Yo creo que yo crecí de esa forma. Para mí declararse palestino es una declaración política y es una declaración de resistencia ante el intento constante de borrar la cultura de nosotros. Hay muchas personas que ahora están aprendiendo a bailar dabke y eso me parece una forma de resistencia importantísima. Es un baile muy poderoso. Es un baile que representa muchas veces también marchar, también protestar, también decir que yo estoy aquí parado bailando mi baile tradicional. Ser palestino para mí es pararse con una postura digna y resiliente. Ellos saben vivir. Hay un dicho que se dice que en cada pueblo, ciudad de Chile, vaya a encontrar una plaza, unos bomberos y un paisano. Y es muy verdad. Me gusta que acá haya como una mini Palestina.
Here is another highlight from the World Service this week. As the Artemis 2 mission looped around the moon, taking 4 astronauts further away from Earth than any human had ever traveled, our dedicated space podcast, 13 Minutes Presents, followed the spacecraft's movements each day. The podcast team, joined by experts, analyzed each momentous event as it happened and discussed what this mission might mean for the future of humanity and whether the US is now winning the space race. You can listen to the podcast on BBC Sounds or wherever you get your podcast.
Thanks for joining me in Pakistan. We want your feedback on Global Eye. Let us know what you think on social media using the hashtag BBC Global Eye. Next week, we'll be reporting from Turkey. Goodbye.